The harsh sound of mocking laughter echoed through the dusty offices of Henderson and Associates as Marcus and Victoria Calloway dismissed their younger sister, Elena's inheritance of their grandfather's worthless army surplus collection. Their voices dripped with condescension as they declared that while they received the valuable real estate and investment portfolios, Elena was stuck with rusty military junk that wouldn't cover the storage fees. What Marcus and Victoria didn't know was that their grandfather, Colonel James Bulldog Calloway, had been secretly operating one of the most sophisticated private weapons procurement networks in military history, and Elena's seemingly worthless inheritance contained access codes to a hidden underground bunker containing $160 million worth of advanced military equipment that would transform their family's financial future forever. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The morning fog rolled across the hills of Mendocino County, California, creating ghostly wisps around the Spanish colonial architecture of the law offices where the Calloway family had gathered for the formal reading of Colonel James Calloway's will. Elena Marie Calloway sat quietly in the corner of the mahogany-paneled conference room, her weathered hands clutching a small silver compass that had belonged to her grandfather. At 34, she carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had learned early that family dynamics often favored the loudest voices rather than the most deserving hearts. Marcus Calloway, 42, adjusted his expensive Italian suit as he reviewed financial documents with the satisfied expression of someone who had always expected to inherit the lion's share of the family wealth. His career as a hedge fund manager in San Francisco had provided him with the kind of aggressive confidence that came from years of making money through other people's work, and he had never questioned his assumption that birth order and business success entitled him to the most valuable portions of his grandfather's estate. Victoria Calloway Preston, 38, sat beside her brother with the perfectly manicured appearance of someone whose marriage to a tech executive had insulated her from financial concerns while providing her with the social status she believed reflected her true worth. Her dismissive glances toward Elena reflected years of sibling rivalry that had crystallized into contempt for what she viewed as Elena's lack of ambition and financial success. Elena had spent the previous decade working as a military historian and artifacts specialist, traveling to remote locations to document and preserve items from various conflicts around the world. Her modest income and unconventional career path had made her the target of family criticism during every holiday gathering and wedding celebration, where Marcus and Victoria never missed opportunities to highlight their material success while questioning Elena's life choices. The law offices of Henderson and Associates occupied a converted Victorian mansion that had served prominent Mendocino County families for over a century. Senior partner William Henderson, 67, had handled the Calloway family's legal affairs for 30 years, developing deep respect for Colonel Calloway's military service and business acumen while observing the complex family dynamics that had shaped 3 generations of sibling relationships. Henderson cleared his throat as he prepared to begin the formal reading, understanding that the next hour would either strengthen family bonds or create divisions that could last for generations. The Colonel's final instructions had been specific and detailed, reflecting careful consideration of each heir's personality and demonstrated values throughout their adult lives. Colonel James Bulldog Calloway had been a legendary figure in military circles, serving with distinction in Vietnam, the Gulf War, and early operations in Afghanistan before retiring to establish what appeared to be a modest military surplus business in rural California. His public persona as a small-town veteran who sold camping gear and historical collectibles had concealed decades of sophisticated international relationships and business arrangements that generated far more wealth than anyone in his family had ever suspected. The reading began with standard legal formalities that established the estate's total value at approximately $847 million, a figure that surprised even Marcus and Victoria, who had expected their grandfather to be wealthy but had never imagined such extraordinary accumulation of assets through what they assumed was simple military surplus trading. Henderson's voice carried clearly through the conference room as he outlined the major bequests that would reshape each sibling's financial future. Marcus received controlling interest in the Colonel's real estate holdings, including commercial properties in Sacramento, Fresno, and San Diego that generated over $2.3 million annually in rental income. The portfolio also included residential developments and agricultural land that provided both immediate cash flow and long-term appreciation potential. Victoria inherited the Colonel's investment portfolios, including stocks, bonds, and mutual funds valued at approximately $4.7 million, along with his collection of vintage automobiles and the family's historical mansion in Napa Valley that had been appraised at $3.2 million. The combination provided her with immediate liquidity and appreciating assets that would ensure financial security for her children's education and her own retirement planning. Elena's inheritance initially appeared to consist entirely of her grandfather's military surplus collection, including thousands of items stored in various warehouses throughout Northern California. The inventory included everything from World War II uniforms and equipment to modern camping gear and historical weapons that had been deactivated according to federal regulations. Henderson's preliminary assessment suggested the collection's total value might reach $200,000 if sold to specialized collectors and military enthusiasts. Marcus couldn't contain his satisfaction as Henderson outlined the major bequests that clearly favored established business success and financial responsibility over what he viewed as Elena's impractical career choices and unconventional lifestyle. His inheritance provided both immediate income and long-term wealth-building opportunities that would allow him to expand his investment strategies while maintaining the luxurious standard of living he had worked to achieve. Victoria's obvious pleasure at receiving liquid assets and appreciating property reflected her belief that the inheritance distribution validated her choices to prioritize financial security and social status over the kind of idealistic pursuits that had characterized Elena's career in military history and artifact preservation. The vintage car collection alone would provide her with valuable assets that could be displayed social events while appreciating in value. Elena listened to the inheritance details with composed acceptance that reflected years of managing family dynamics where her siblings' material success had always been celebrated, while her own achievements in preserving military history had been dismissed as financially impractical hobbies that failed to demonstrate real-world competence or business acumen. Henderson paused in his reading to study Elena's expression, recognizing something in her demeanor that suggested she understood aspects of her grandfather's life and business that had remained hidden from other family members. The Colonel had specifically requested that Elena's portion of the inheritance be explained in detail, with particular attention to storage facilities and documentation that accompanied the military surplus collection. The law office conference room grew quiet as Henderson prepared to reveal the specific details of Elena's inheritance, including access to 12 different storage facilities located throughout California, Nevada, and Oregon. Each facility contained carefully cataloged collections that spanned 7 decades of military equipment, personal effects, and historical artifacts that the Colonel had acquired through various channels during his extended military and business career. Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances that reflected growing satisfaction about the inheritance distribution, recognizing that Elena's collection of military surplus would require significant ongoing expenses for storage, insurance, and maintenance, while generating minimal income compared to their own real estate and investment portfolios. The prospect of Elena struggling with warehouses full of old military equipment validated their long-held beliefs about the practical consequences of choosing idealism over financial pragmatism. The storage facility documentation included detailed inventories that demonstrated the Colonel's systematic approach to collecting and preserving military artifacts from conflicts spanning the 20th and early 21st centuries. Each warehouse contained items that had been carefully organized by era, conflict, and military branch, creating comprehensive collections that reflected decades of patient acquisition and meticulous record-keeping. Elena's inheritance also included her grandfather's personal library, containing over 3,000 books on military history, strategy, and international relations, along with his extensive collection of maps, photographs, and personal correspondence with military leaders from around the world. The library represented a scholarly resource that would be invaluable for someone with Elena's background in military history, but appeared to have little monetary value compared to her siblings' liquid assets. Henderson concluded the initial reading by explaining that each heir would receive detailed documentation about their specific inheritance, including legal obligations, tax implications, and recommendations for managing their newly acquired assets. The meeting would reconvene in 1 week to address questions and finalize transfer procedures that would give each sibling full control over their inherited property. As the formal session ended, Marcus and Victoria began discussing plans for their inherited assets with obvious enthusiasm about investment opportunities and lifestyle improvements that their newfound wealth would enable. Their conversation centered on tax strategies, property management, and wealth preservation techniques that reflected their confidence in handling substantial financial resources. Elena remained seated as her siblings departed, studying the preliminary inventory sheets that listed hundreds of items stored in facilities she had never known existed. The documentation suggested that her grandfather's military surplus business had been far more extensive and sophisticated than anyone in the family had ever realized, involving international connections and acquisition networks that spanned multiple continents. Henderson approached Elena's chair with additional documentation that had been sealed separately from the main estate materials, explaining that the Colonel had left specific instructions for private discussion of certain aspects of her inheritance that required individual attention and careful explanation of responsibilities that extended beyond simple ownership of military collectibles. The sealed envelope contained a handwritten letter from Colonel Calloway that began with an apology for the complexity of what Elena was about to discover about his true business activities and the real nature of the military surplus collection that would now become her responsibility to manage, protect, and potentially continue according to principles he had developed over decades of careful operation. The letter's opening paragraphs hinted at sophisticated international relationships and business arrangements that had generated far more wealth than the family had ever suspected, while creating obligations and opportunities that would require Elena's specific expertise in military history and artifact authentication to manage effectively and legally within existing federal and international regulations governing military equipment and historical preservation. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she unfolded her grandfather's handwritten letter in the privacy of her small apartment overlooking the Mendocino coastline that evening. The faded ink and precise military penmanship revealed secrets that had been carefully guarded for over 4 decades, beginning with an explanation that would fundamentally alter her understanding of everything she thought she knew about Colonel James Calloway's post-military career and business activities. The letter began with a confession that the modest military surplus stores visible to the public had served as fronts for a sophisticated international procurement network that specialized in acquiring, authenticating, and preserving military equipment from conflicts around the world. What appeared to be simple camping gear sales and historical collectibles trading had actually generated millions of dollars annually through relationships with governments, museums, private collectors, and specialized institutions that required access to authentic military artifacts for research, training, and historical preservation purposes. Colonel Calloway had begun developing these international connections during his active duty service, recognizing that military equipment from various conflicts possessed significant historical and monetary value that was often overlooked by official disposal procedures. His expertise in weapons systems, combined with his extensive network of military contacts across multiple countries, had enabled him to identify and acquire items that would appreciate dramatically in value while serving legitimate educational and research purposes. The procurement network had evolved gradually from small-scale trading of surplus items to comprehensive operations that involved authentication services, restoration projects, and specialized consulting for organizations that needed access to historical military equipment for films, museums, training programs, and academic research. Each transaction had been carefully documented and conducted within legal frameworks that governed international trade in military artifacts and historical items. Elena discovered that her seemingly modest inheritance included detailed records of transactions spanning 5 decades, with clients that included major motion picture studios, international museums, private collectors, and government agencies that required authentic historical military equipment for various legitimate purposes. The documentation revealed gross revenues that exceeded $200 million over the colonel's business career, with profit margins that reflected the specialized knowledge required to identify, acquire, authenticate, and preserve military artifacts. Colonel's letter explained that Elena had been chosen as his successor not because of birth order or financial acumen, but because of her unique combination of military historical expertise, ethical standards, and genuine appreciation for preserving artifacts that represented significant chapters in human conflict and resolution. Her academic background and professional experience in military history made her the only family member qualified to understand and continue the sophisticated work that had built the family's hidden wealth. Throughout Elena's childhood, the colonel had carefully observed her natural curiosity about military history and her respectful approach to handling artifacts and historical items. During summer visits to his rural property, he had provided informal education about weapon systems, military strategy, and the historical significance of various conflicts, recognizing in Elena the same passion for preservation and understanding that had motivated his own transition from active military service to historical documentation and artifact acquisition. The letter revealed that Elena's academic career in military history had been partially funded through scholarships and research grants that the colonel had quietly arranged through his extensive network of contacts in universities, museums, and historical organizations. Her expertise in authentication, restoration, and historical documentation had been developed through opportunities that he had carefully orchestrated to prepare her for eventually inheriting and continuing his business operations. Elena's travels to document military artifacts in remote locations around the world had actually served a dual purpose, providing her with legitimate academic credentials while allowing her to develop relationships with international contacts who were part of her grandfather's procurement network. Many of the research projects she had considered purely academic endeavors had actually been sponsored by clients who valued her expertise in identifying and authenticating military artifacts for their private collections or institutional displays. Colonel's business had operated through a complex network of shell companies, international partnerships, and specialized consulting arrangements that generated revenue streams far beyond anything visible through the public military surplus stores. Elena's inheritance included controlling interests in companies registered in Delaware, Nevada, and the Cayman Islands, along with partnerships in Switzerland and Singapore that managed international transactions and provided legal frameworks for cross-border trade in military artifacts. The documentation revealed that Elena's grandfather had maintained relationships with arms dealers, government surplus agencies, private military contractors, and international auction houses that specialized in military collectibles and historical weapons. These relationships had provided access to equipment and artifacts that would never reach public markets, including items from classified military programs, experimental weapons systems, and personal effects from high-ranking military officers. Throughout various conflicts, Elena learned that her modest lifestyle and career in military history had actually been subsidized by trust funds that the colonel had established to ensure her financial independence, while allowing her to develop expertise that would be essential for continuing his business operations. Her student loans had been quietly paid off through anonymous gifts, and her research travels had been supported by grants that originated from foundations controlled by her grandfather's network of business associates. The letter explained that the 12 storage facilities included in Elena's inheritance contained not just the visible military surplus items that had been cataloged for estate purposes, but also hidden sections that housed far more valuable and sensitive collections that required specialized knowledge to access, authenticate, and manage. The true inventory included rare weapons, classified military equipment, and historical artifacts that represented the most valuable portions of the colonel's lifetime. Accumulation efforts. Elena discovered that her grandfather had spent decades developing relationships with veterans from various conflicts who possessed personal military items, family weapons, and historical artifacts that they needed to sell for financial reasons or estate planning purposes. His reputation for fair dealing and proper authentication had made him the preferred buyer for families who wanted to ensure their military heritage would be preserved and valued appropriately. The procurement network had also included relationships with military base commanders, surplus disposal officers, and government agencies that needed to dispose of equipment through authorized channels, while ensuring that historically significant items would be preserved rather than destroyed or sold to scrap dealers who had no appreciation for their historical and educational value. Elena's inheritance. Documentation revealed that many items in the storage facilities had been acquired directly from veterans or their families, including personal weapons, uniforms, equipment, and documentation that provided unique insights into individual experiences during various conflicts. These personal collections often included items that had never been officially cataloged by military historians, making them invaluable for research and educational purposes. The colonel had also maintained relationships with international arms dealers and military equipment specialists who provided access to weapons systems and equipment from countries around the world, creating comprehensive collections that represented military technology development across multiple decades and conflicts. These relationships had been carefully managed to ensure all transactions remained within legal frameworks governing international trade in military equipment and historical artifacts. Elena learned that her grandfather's expertise in weapons authentication and historical verification had made him a sought-after consultant for law enforcement agencies, insurance companies, and legal firms that needed expert testimony regarding military equipment, weapons identification, and historical artifact authentication. This consulting work had generated substantial additional revenue while establishing his reputation as one of the most knowledgeable experts in military collectibles and historical weapons systems. The letter revealed that Elena's academic publications and research work had actually enhanced her grandfather's business reputation, as clients valued dealing with someone whose family included recognized experts in military history and artifact authentication. Her scholarly credentials had provided legitimacy and credibility that enhanced the value of the colonel's authentication services and consulting work. Elena discovered that the storage facilities were equipped with climate control systems, security equipment, and specialized storage materials that had been necessary to preserve the condition and value of items that included rare firearms, delicate uniforms, historical documents, and electronic equipment that required specific environmental conditions to prevent deterioration over time. The colonel's letter concluded with explanations of ongoing business relationships that Elena would need to manage, including clients who had placed orders for specific items, authentication projects that were in progress, and consulting contracts that generated monthly revenue streams. The transition would require Elena to gradually assume responsibility for operations that had been carefully developed over decades of patient relationship building and reputation establishment. Elena realized that her seemingly worthless inheritance of military surplus actually represented entry into a sophisticated international business that had generated extraordinary wealth while serving legitimate purposes in historical preservation, education, and research. The colonel's careful preparation had equipped her with exactly the expertise and relationships necessary to continue operations that honored military heritage while providing substantial financial returns through ethical and legal channels. Handwritten letter ended with coordinates and access codes that would allow Elena to discover the full extent of her inheritance, including facilities and collections that had been completely hidden from estate documentation to protect both their contents and their strategic value within the international military collectibles market. The following morning, Elena drove her weathered Honda Civic through the winding mountain roads of Humboldt County toward the first set of coordinates her grandfather had provided, her mind racing with possibilities about what she might discover in facilities that had been completely hidden from the official estate inventory. The coastal fog gradually lifted as she climbed higher into the redwood forests, revealing glimpses of the Pacific Ocean far below while she processed the implications of inheriting a business empire that none of her family members had ever suspected existed. Marcus had called her at dawn with barely concealed glee in his voice, offering to help her manage what he described as the overwhelming burden of dealing with warehouses full of worthless military junk that would drain her modest savings through storage fees and insurance costs. His patronizing tone reflected years of viewing Elena as the impractical dreamer whose career choices had consistently disappointed family expectations about financial success and social achievement. Victoria's text messages had arrived throughout the early morning hours, each one containing helpful suggestions about liquidating Elena's military surplus collection as quickly as possible to avoid the ongoing expenses that would inevitably consume whatever small value might be recovered from decades of accumulated Army surplus items. Her advice reflected the same dismissive attitude that had characterized family discussions about Elena's career in military history for over a decade. Elena's siblings had spent the previous evening celebrating their substantial inheritances at Marcus's penthouse apartment in San Francisco, toasting their grandfather's wisdom and rewarding their demonstrated business success while acknowledging Elena's inheritance as an expensive lesson about the consequences of choosing idealistic pursuits over practical financial planning. Their celebration had included detailed discussions about investment strategies, tax optimization, and wealth preservation techniques that would maximize their newfound financial resources. The first storage facility appeared exactly where the coordinates indicated, concealed behind dense forest growth that made it invisible from the narrow county road that wound through this remote section of California's north coast. Elena followed a barely visible gravel path that led to a reinforced concrete building that appeared to have been constructed with military-grade security specifications and camouflage to blend seamlessly with the surrounding natural environment. Access code from her grandfather's letter opened electronic locks that revealed an interior far more sophisticated than anything Elena had expected based on her assumptions about typical storage facilities. Climate-controlled chambers extended deep into the hillside, containing row upon row of professionally organized military equipment that had been cataloged with museum-quality documentation and preservation standards. Elena's flashlight illuminated displays that showcased weapons systems from conflicts spanning 8 decades, including items she recognized as extremely rare and historically significant pieces that would be valued in the hundreds of pounds. thousands of dollars by serious collectors, and military museums. Each item had been carefully restored to museum condition and accompanied by detailed provenance documentation that established authenticity and historical context. The first chamber contained World War II equipment that included uniforms, weapons, and personal effects from both Allied and Axis forces, organized by theater of operations and military branch with documentation that revealed how each item had been acquired and authenticated. Elena recognized several pieces that she had seen, referenced in academic papers, but never expected to encounter in private collections due to their rarity and historical significance. Deeper chambers revealed equipment from the Korean War, Vietnam conflict, and various Cold War operations that included items Elena had only seen in classified military history texts during her graduate research. The collection included experimental weapon systems, specialized equipment used by elite units, and personal effects from high-ranking officers that provided unique insights into military operations that remained classified in official historical records. Elena discovered that each storage chamber was equipped with environmental monitoring systems, fire suppression equipment, and security cameras that had been recording activity for decades while maintaining optimal conditions for preserving materials that ranged from delicate textiles to complex electronic equipment. The sophistication of the storage systems reflected investment levels that suggested the colonel had valued these collections far beyond simple historical interest. The documentation accompanying each item revealed a level of historical research and authentication that impressed Elena's professional standards for military history scholarship. Her grandfather had apparently employed researchers, consultants, and technical experts to verify the authenticity and historical significance of items that represented some of the most important artifacts from 20th century military conflicts. Elena's exploration revealed that the facility contained not just weapons and equipment, but also extensive archives of documents, photographs, maps, and personal correspondence that provided unprecedented insights into military operations, strategic planning, and individual experiences during various conflicts. These archival materials represented resources that would be invaluable for military historians and researchers worldwide. The deeper she ventured into the facility, the more Elena realized that her grandfather's collection represented decades of systematic effort to preserve military heritage that might otherwise have been lost, destroyed, or scattered among private collectors who lacked the expertise to properly maintain and document historically significant items. The scope and quality of the collection suggested curatorial expertise that rivaled major military museums. Elena photographed inventory sheets that listed thousands of items with estimated values that challenged her understanding of the military collectibles market. Individual weapons that she had assumed might be worth hundreds of dollars were documented with appraisals reaching tens of thousands, while complete equipment sets and rare experimental items carried valuations that exceeded her annual salary. As a military historian, the facility's computer systems contained databases that tracked market values, auction results, and collector interest in various categories of military equipment, revealing that her grandfather had been operating with sophisticated understanding of international markets for military collectibles and historical artifacts. The business intelligence reflected years of monitoring trends, prices, and collector preferences across multiple continents. Elena discovered shipping records that documented transactions with clients worldwide, including major motion picture studios that had rented authentic military equipment for historical films, museums that had acquired items for permanent displays, and private collectors who had paid premium prices for rare pieces that enhanced their specialized collections. The revenue streams reflected ongoing business relationships that generated substantial monthly income through equipment rental, authentication services, and direct sales. Her grandfather's client list included names she recognized from military history literature, film production companies, international museums, and private foundations that specialized in military heritage preservation. The diversity and prominence of clients suggested reputation and credibility that had been built through decades of honest dealing and expert knowledge in military collectibles. Authentication. Elena found correspondence files that revealed her grandfather's relationships with veterans, military families, and estate executors who had sold military items through his network rather than disposing of them through standard channels that often resulted in historically significant items being lost or destroyed. His reputation for fair pricing and proper preservation had made him the preferred buyer for families who wanted to ensure their military heritage would be appropriately valued and maintained. The business records revealed revenue streams that had consistently generated millions of dollars annually through combination of direct sales, rental income, authentication services, and consulting contracts with organizations that required expert knowledge of military equipment and historical artifacts. The profit margins reflected the specialized expertise required to identify, acquire, authenticate, and market military collectibles to discriminating clients worldwide. Elena discovered that her grandfather had maintained relationships with arms dealers, surplus disposal officers, and military contractors who provided advance notice of equipment that would become available through official disposal channels. These relationships had enabled him to acquire items before they reached public auctions or surplus sales, often obtaining historically significant pieces at fraction of their eventual market value. The facility contained complete restoration workshops equipped with specialized tools, materials, and equipment necessary to return military artifacts to museum condition while maintaining their historical authenticity and value. Elena recognized equipment that would be found in professional conservation laboratories, suggesting that her grandfather had invested substantially in maintaining the quality and condition of his collections. Elena found records indicating that several universities and research institutions had provided funding for specific acquisition projects, paying premium prices for access to authentic military equipment that enhanced their educational programs and research capabilities. These institutional relationships had provided steady revenue streams while ensuring that historically significant items remained available to legitimate researchers and educators. Her exploration revealed that the facility contained specialized storage areas for different categories of military equipment, including climate-controlled chambers for textiles and paper documents, secure vaults for weapons and ammunition, and temperature-controlled environments for electronic equipment and optical devices that required specific conditions to prevent deterioration. Elena discovered that her grandfather had employed specialists in various aspects of military collectibles, including restoration experts, authentication consultants, and market analysts who had helped identify acquisition opportunities and maximize the value of items through proper preservation and documentation. The business had operated with professional standards that exceeded those of many established auction houses and military museums. The scope of the collections and the collections and the sophistication of the business operations revealed that Elena had inherited not just military surplus, but rather a comprehensive enterprise that combined historical preservation, international trade, and specialized consulting services within the growing market for authentic military collectibles and historical artifacts. As Elena prepared to leave the first facility, she realized that her siblings' assumptions about inheriting worthless military junk had been based on complete ignorance of both the contents and the business model that had generated extraordinary wealth through ethical and legal channels while serving legitimate purposes in military history preservation and education. Elena's hands shook as she dialed Marcus's number from the parking lot outside the hidden facility, her voice carefully controlled as she requested an emergency family meeting to discuss what she had discovered about their grandfather's business operations. Marcus's immediate assumption that Elena was calling to beg for financial assistance with storage costs, reflected his continued belief that her inheritance represented nothing more than an expensive burden that would drain her limited resources. Marcus agreed to meet at Victoria's Napa Valley mansion that afternoon, his tone suggesting magnanimous willingness to help his struggling sister navigate the practical challenges of disposing of military junk that any reasonable person would recognize as worthless accumulation of old Army surplus items. His condescending offer to connect Elena with wholesale buyers who might purchase the entire collection for scrap value demonstrated his complete misunderstanding of what she had actually inherited. Victoria's response was similarly dismissive when Elena called to arrange the meeting, with helpful suggestions about donation strategies that might provide tax benefits, while eliminating the ongoing costs of maintaining warehouses full of outdated military equipment. Her advice reflected years of viewing Elena as the impractical family member whose poor financial decisions consistently required intervention from more successful siblings. The drive to Victoria's mansion provided Elena with time to consider how to present her discoveries without immediately revealing the full scope of wealth and business operations that would fundamentally alter family dynamics and challenge her siblings' assumptions about their relative financial positions. She decided to begin with modest revelations that would prepare them for more significant information while gauging their reactions to unexpected value in her inheritance. Victoria's estate occupied 12 acres of prime Napa Valley vineyard property that had been decorated with the kind of casual luxury that reflected substantial wealth and refined taste. The main house combined traditional California architecture with modern amenities, creating an atmosphere of established success that Marcus and Victoria had always used to demonstrate their superior life choices compared to Elena's modest academic career. Marcus arrived in his new Tesla Model S, the latest symbol of his hedge fund success and commitment to environmental responsibility that complemented his investment portfolio's focus on sustainable technology companies. His expensive casual wear and confident demeanor reflected years of financial achievement that had validated his belief in the superiority of business acumen over academic pursuits that failed to generate substantial monetary returns. The family meeting convened in Victoria's professionally decorated living room, where Marcus and Victoria positioned themselves with obvious satisfaction about their ability to provide guidance and support for Elena's challenging situation. Their expressions conveyed patient willingness to help their less fortunate sister navigate problems that resulted from their grandfather's questionable decision to burden her with worthless military collectibles. Elena began her presentation by acknowledging that her initial assessment of the inheritance had been incomplete, explaining that she had discovered additional storage facilities and documentation that revealed greater complexity in their grandfather's business operations than anyone had previously understood. Her careful phrasing was designed to prepare her siblings for information that would challenge their assumptions without immediately threatening their sense of superiority. Marcus interrupted Elena's explanation with reassurances that additional storage facilities would only increase the financial burden of her inheritance, offering to negotiate with storage companies for reduced rates or early termination of lease agreements that would minimize Elena's ongoing expenses. His helpful tone reflected genuine belief that he was providing valuable assistance for a situation that required practical business solutions, rather than sentimental attachment to military memorabilia. Victoria suggested that Elena should focus on identifying items with potential resale value rather than attempting to maintain entire collections that would require ongoing investment in storage, insurance, and security systems beyond Elena's financial capabilities. Her advice reflected practical wisdom gained through years of managing substantial assets and understanding the importance of maximizing returns while minimizing expenses and administrative burdens. Elena produced photographs of some items she had discovered, beginning with pieces that were obviously valuable without revealing the full scope of the collections or their estimated worth. She showed images of restored World War II uniforms, authenticated weapons, and rare equipment that even her siblings could recognize as potentially valuable to collectors and military enthusiasts. Marcus studied the photographs with growing interest, acknowledging that some items appeared to be in excellent condition and might attract buyer interest from military history enthusiasts or collectors who specialized in authentic period pieces. His revised assessment reflected recognition that Elena's inheritance might contain scattered valuable items among the general accumulation of surplus military equipment. Victoria examined the documentation that accompanied Elena's photographs, noting the professional quality of the cataloging and authentication records that suggested more systematic organization than they had expected from their grandfather's apparently modest surplus business. Her surprise at the sophistication of record-keeping indicated beginning recognition that the business operations had been more complex than superficial appearances suggested. Elena gradually revealed additional information about the scope of the collections, explaining that her grandfather had maintained relationships with museums, film studios, and private collectors who regularly purchased or rented authentic military equipment for various legitimate purposes. She described transactions that had generated substantial revenue streams through specialized markets that valued authenticity and historical accuracy. The revelation that their grandfather had been operating profitable relationships with major motion picture studios impressed both Marcus and Victoria, who began to understand that military collectibles represented a legitimate business sector with established markets and substantial transaction volumes. Their growing interest reflected recognition that Elena's inheritance might include ongoing business relationships rather than simply accumulated inventory. Elena showed additional photographs of rare items that included experimental weapon systems, personal effects from high-ranking military officers, and equipment from classified operations that would command premium prices from serious collectors and institutions. The documentation revealed provenance information and authentication details that established the historical significance and monetary value of individual pieces. Marcus's expression shifted from patronizing concern to genuine business interest as he processed the implications of Elena's discoveries, recognizing that systematic collection and authentication of military artifacts could generate substantial returns through specialized markets that he had never previously considered. His hedge fund experience provided perspective on niche markets that could deliver exceptional profits for investors with appropriate expertise and access. Victoria began asking detailed questions about client relationships, transaction volumes, and revenue streams that revealed her growing understanding that their grandfather's business had operated at levels far beyond anything they had imagined based on the modest appearance of public surplus stores. Her questions reflected analytical skills developed through years of managing substantial investment portfolios and business interests. Elena revealed that her exploration of storage facilities had been limited to preliminary assessment of contents and documentation, explaining that comprehensive evaluation would require weeks or months of detailed inventory work and professional appraisals to establish accurate valuations for insurance and estate planning purposes. Her systematic approach impressed her siblings, who recognized the thoroughness required for proper asset management. The discussion gradually evolved from Marcus and Victoria offering assistance with Elena's burden to requesting detailed information about business operations, client relationships, and market opportunities that might benefit from their financial expertise and business connections. Their changing perspective reflected growing recognition that Elena's inheritance represented substantial business assets rather than expensive collections of military memorabilia. Elena carefully revealed that preliminary estimates suggested her grandfather's collections and business relationships might be worth significantly more than the estate documentation had indicated. explaining that specialized markets for military collectibles often involved private transactions that wouldn't appear in standard business valuations or public records. Her explanation prepared her siblings for the possibility that their assumptions about inheritance distribution might require revision. Marcus began discussing potential partnerships or collaborative arrangements that could leverage his financial expertise and business connections to maximize the value of Elena's inheritance, suggesting that family cooperation might benefit everyone involved rather than leaving Elena to manage complex business operations independently. His shifting attitude reflected recognition of opportunities rather than obligations. Victoria expressed interest in learning more about authentication processes, client relationships, and market dynamics that could inform investment strategies and business development opportunities within the military collectibles sector. Her questions demonstrated growing respect for Elena's expertise and recognition that specialized knowledge would be essential for successful business operations. Elena concluded the initial presentation by explaining that she had scheduled professional appraisals and business evaluations that would provide comprehensive assessment of the inheritance's actual value and ongoing revenue potential. She suggested that the family reconvene after these evaluations were complete to discuss collaborative approaches that might benefit everyone while honoring their grandfather's legacy and business relationships. The meeting ended with Marcus and Victoria expressing genuine interest in Elena's discoveries and requesting regular updates about appraisal results and business assessments. Their transformed attitudes reflected growing recognition that Elena's inheritance might represent opportunities rather than burdens, challenging their initial assumptions about inheritance distribution and family financial dynamics. As Elena prepared to leave Victoria's mansion, her siblings' parting comments revealed complete reversal of their earlier dismissive attitudes, with offers of assistance, expressions of admiration for Elena's thorough approach, and suggestions for future collaboration that demonstrated their growing respect for both her expertise and her unexpected business inheritance. Elena returned to the second coordinates from her grandfather's letter 3 days later, this time accompanied by military artifact appraiser Dr. Sarah Chun, whose expertise in authentication and valuation had been recommended by the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History. The drive through the remote coastal mountains of Oregon led them to a facility that dwarfed the first location, with multiple buildings concealed within a natural canyon that provided both security and climate control through its unique geological formation. Dr. Chun's initial reaction upon entering the main storage complex was audible amazement as her professional expertise immediately recognized items that belonged in the world's most prestigious military museums rather than private storage facilities. Her preliminary assessment identified weapon systems, experimental equipment, and historical artifacts that represented some of the most significant military technological developments of the 20th and 21st centuries. The Oregon facility contained specialized chambers that housed complete collections from specific military operations, including equipment sets that had been acquired directly from classified programs and elite military units. Elena discovered documentation indicating that her grandfather had maintained purchasing relationships with defense contractors, military research facilities, and government agencies that needed to dispose of experimental equipment through authorized channels while ensuring proper preservation and documentation. Dr. Chun's professional equipment confirmed the authenticity of items that included prototype weapon systems that had never reached production status, specialized equipment developed for classified operations, and personal effects from military leaders whose identities remained classified decades after their service. The authentication process revealed provenance documentation that established clear legal ownership while confirming historical significance that would attract international collector interest. Elena's exploration revealed that the facility contained complete archives of technical documentation, maintenance manuals, and operational reports that accompanied the physical artifacts, creating comprehensive collections that would be invaluable for military historians, defense researchers, and educational institutions. The documentation revealed that her grandfather had employed technical experts and military historians to ensure that each acquisition included complete contextual information. Dr. Chen's preliminary valuations identified individual items worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, with complete collection sets valued in the millions based on current market conditions for authentic military artifacts and specialized collector demand. Her professional assessment indicated that the Oregon facility alone contained inventory worth more than the combined value of Marcus and Victoria's inherited real estate and investment portfolios. The facility's computer systems contained client databases that documented ongoing relationships with defense contractors, military research institutions, and international collectors who regularly purchased equipment for legitimate research, training, and educational purposes. Elena discovered that monthly revenue streams from these relationships exceeded her annual salary as a military historian by substantial margins. Elena found correspondence indicating that several major defense companies had standing orders for specific types of equipment that would become available through military disposal channels, with her grandfather serving as intermediary between government surplus operations and private sector clients who needed authentic equipment for reverse engineering, testing, and comparative analysis purposes. Dr. Chen's authentication work revealed that many items in the collection had been acquired directly from military personnel who had legally retained equipment after completing specialized assignments or classified operations. The documentation established clear chain of custody while confirming that all acquisitions had been conducted within legal frameworks governing military equipment disposal and private ownership. Elena discovered that her grandfather had maintained relationships with veterans from elite military units who possessed specialized equipment that had never been officially cataloged by military historians or museums. These relationships had provided access to items that offered unique insights into classified operations and specialized military capabilities that remained unknown to general military history scholarship. The Oregon facility contained restoration workshops equipped with manufacturing equipment that enabled complete refurbishment of military artifacts to original specifications while maintaining historical authenticity and value. Elena found records indicating that restoration services had generated substantial additional revenue streams through contracts with museums, collectors, and film production companies. Dr. Chen's evaluation revealed that the collection included items from classified military programs that had been declassified years after their original development, making them legally available for private ownership, while maintaining their significance for understanding military technological development during critical periods of 20th century conflict and international competition. Elena's investigation uncovered shipping records that documented international transactions with clients in allied countries who had purchased equipment for military training programs, museum displays, and research projects. The international scope of business operations reflected sophisticated understanding of export regulations and international trade requirements governing military equipment and historical artifacts. The facility's security systems included biometric access controls, environmental monitoring equipment, and surveillance systems that had protected collections worth hundreds of millions of dollars, while maintaining climate conditions necessary to preserve delicate materials and complex mechanical systems over extended periods. Elena discovered that her grandfather had employed specialists in various technical fields, including weapons engineers, electronics experts, and materials scientists who had provided authentication services and technical analysis that enhanced the value and credibility of items offered to sophisticated clients who demanded expert verification of authenticity and functionality. Dr. Chun's detailed examination revealed that many items retained their original functionality despite decades of storage, suggesting that her grandfather had invested substantially in preservation techniques and maintenance procedures that protected both historical value and operational capabilities. The condition of equipment exceeded expectations for items that had been acquired from surplus channels and private sources. Elena found documentation indicating that several universities had funded specific acquisition projects, paying premium prices for authentic equipment that enhanced their military history programs and research capabilities. These institutional relationships had provided steady revenue streams while ensuring that historically significant items remained available to legitimate researchers and educators. The facility contained specialized storage areas for different categories of military technology, including secured vaults for weapon systems, climate-controlled chambers for electronic equipment, and temperature-stable environments for optical devices and precision instruments that required specific conditions to maintain their functionality and value over time. Elena's exploration revealed that the collection included personal effects and equipment from high-ranking military officers whose service had spanned multiple conflicts and classified operations. These personal collections often included items that had never been documented in official military records, making them invaluable for understanding individual leadership experiences during critical historical periods. Dr. Chun's professional assessment confirmed that the Oregon facility contained one of the most comprehensive private collections of 20th century military technology in existence, with items representing virtually every major conflict and military technological development from World War I through recent operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. Elena discovered that her grandfather had maintained purchasing relationships with military families and estate executors who needed to dispose of inherited military items through channels that would ensure proper preservation and appropriate valuation. His reputation for fair dealing and expert knowledge had made him the preferred buyer for families who wanted to honor military heritage while receiving appropriate compensation. The business records revealed that authentication services had generated substantial consulting revenue through contracts with insurance companies, legal firms, and auction houses that required expert testimony regarding military equipment identification, historical significance, and market valuation. These professional services had enhanced the business's reputation while providing additional income streams. Elena found correspondence with film production companies that had paid substantial fees for access to authentic military equipment that enhanced the historical accuracy of major motion pictures and television productions. The rental income from entertainment industry clients had provided steady revenue while ensuring that items remained available for legitimate educational and cultural purposes. Dr. Chun's evaluation indicated that the collection's total value exceeded $160 million based on current market conditions and comparable sales of similar items through established auction houses and private transactions. Her conservative estimate reflected only readily marketable items without accounting for the additional value that might be realized through specialized collector interest and institutional acquisitions. Elena realized that her seemingly modest inheritance of military surplus actually represented ownership of one of the world's most valuable private collections of military artifacts, along with established business relationships that generated millions of dollars annually through legitimate channels serving museums, researchers, collectors, and entertainment industry clients worldwide. The scope and value of her discoveries revealed that Marcus and Victoria's initial dismissal of her inheritance as worthless military junk had been based on complete ignorance of both the contents and the sophisticated business operations that had generated extraordinary wealth through decades of systematic collection, authentication, and preservation of historically significant military artifacts. Dr. Chun's professional documentation would provide the evidence necessary to demonstrate that Elena's inheritance represented assets far exceeding her siblings, combined real estate and investment portfolios, fundamentally altering family financial dynamics while validating Elena's expertise in military history and artifact authentication that had prepared her to manage this unexpected business empire. Elena's discovery of the third facility's entrance required precise GPS coordinates and a hidden access road concealed behind what appeared to be abandoned mining equipment in the remote mountains of northern Nevada. The reinforced steel doors opened to reveal an elevator that descended 60 feet underground into a natural cavern system that had been expanded and reinforced to create the most sophisticated storage complex she had yet encountered. Protected by geological stability and completely invisible to satellite surveillance or casual discovery, the underground complex contained chambers that stretched for hundreds of yards through interconnected caverns, each section climate-controlled and secured with military-grade access systems that required both electronic codes and biometric verification. Elena's exploration revealed storage areas that contained not just individual military artifacts, but complete weapon systems, vehicles, and equipment sets that represented entire military units worth of equipment from various conflicts and classified operations. Elena discovered a sealed office complex within the underground facility that contained her grandfather's private records, including correspondence and documentation that revealed the true scope of his international relationships and business operations. The files contained communications with defense ministers, military contractors, and intelligence agencies from multiple countries, indicating that Colonel Calloway had operated at levels of international military commerce that extended far beyond simple surplus trading. The correspondence revealed that her grandfather had served as an intermediary for transactions between governments that needed to dispose of military equipment discreetly while ensuring that advanced technology didn't fall into unauthorized hands. His role had involved authenticating equipment, verifying end-user credentials, and facilitating transfers that served diplomatic and strategic purposes while generating substantial profits through specialized knowledge and trusted relationships. Elena found documentation indicating that several foreign governments had paid premium prices for access to American military equipment that enhanced their training programs and defensive capabilities. These transactions had been conducted through authorized channels with appropriate government oversight, but had generated revenue streams that dwarfed anything Elena had previously imagined possible through military surplus trading. The private office contained detailed financial records that revealed the colonel's business operations had generated over $200 million in gross revenue during the previous decade alone, with profit margins that reflected the specialized expertise required to navigate international regulations, authentication requirements, and diplomatic considerations governing military equipment transfers between allied nations. Elena discovered that her grandfather had maintained relationships with arms manufacturers who provided advance access to equipment that would become available through official disposal channels, enabling him to acquire items before they reached public auctions while ensuring that historically significant pieces were preserved rather than destroyed or sold for scrap value to buyers who lacked appreciation for their military heritage. Facility contained complete maintenance and restoration workshops, equipped with manufacturing tools that enabled reproduction of original components from military equipment that required specialized parts, no longer available through normal supply channels. Elena found records indicating that restoration services had generated substantial additional revenue through contracts with museums and collectors who needed expert craftsmanship to return historical artifacts to original condition. Elena's exploration revealed that the underground complex contained specialized storage areas for different categories of military technology, including secured vaults for experimental weapon systems, radiation-shielded chambers for electronic equipment, and temperature-controlled environments for chemical and biological detection equipment that required specific preservation conditions to maintain functionality over extended periods. The documentation revealed that her grandfather had employed teams of specialists, including former military officers, defense contractors, and technical experts who provided authentication services, restoration work, and consulting expertise that enhanced the value and credibility of equipment offered to sophisticated clients who demanded professional verification of authenticity and operational capability. Elena discovered correspondence indicating that several intelligence agencies had utilized her grandfather's services for acquiring equipment needed for training programs, comparative analysis, and reverse engineering projects that supported national security objectives while providing legitimate channels for accessing foreign military technology through authorized procurement networks. The facility's computer systems contained databases that tracked market values, collector interest, and institutional demand for various categories of military equipment across international markets. The business intelligence reflected sophisticated understanding of supply and demand dynamics that enabled strategic acquisitions and optimal timing for sales that maximized revenue while serving legitimate client needs. Elena found shipping records that documented transactions with clients on every continent, including defense contractors, military museums, research institutions, and private collectors who had paid substantial premiums for authenticated equipment that enhanced their specialized collections or research capabilities. The international scope of operations reflected decades of relationship building and reputation establishment within global military collectibles markets. The underground facility contained archives that documented the provenance and historical significance of thousands of items, including equipment from classified operations that had been declassified years after their original deployment. The comprehensive documentation provided scholarly resources that would be invaluable for military historians and researchers worldwide, while establishing clear legal ownership and authentication for valuable artifacts. Elena discovered that her grandfather had maintained purchasing agreements with military contractors who needed to dispose of prototype equipment and experimental systems that had been developed for classified programs but never reached production status. These relationships had provided access to unique items that offered insights into military technological development during critical periods of international competition and conflict. The facility contained complete collections from specific military units and operations, including personal effects, equipment, and documentation that provided comprehensive insights into individual and unit experiences during various conflicts. These collections represented resources that would be impossible to replicate through normal acquisition channels, making them extraordinarily valuable for both historical research and collector interest. Elena found records indicating that several major universities had provided funding for specific acquisition projects, paying substantial premiums for access to authentic equipment that enhanced their military history programs and research capabilities. These institutional relationships had generated steady revenue streams while ensuring that historically significant items remained available to legitimate scholars and educators. The business documentation revealed ongoing contracts with film production companies that paid substantial fees for access to authentic military equipment that enhanced the historical accuracy of major motion pictures and television productions. The entertainment industry relationships had provided consistent revenue while maintaining the visibility and condition of items through professional use in controlled environments. Elena discovered that her grandfather had employed former intelligence officers and military specialists who provided security consulting, threat assessment, and risk management services that protected both the physical collections and the sensitive information contained in client databases and transaction records. The security measures reflected understanding of the strategic value and potential Vulnerabilities associated with maintaining extensive military equipment collections. The facility's environmental systems included sophisticated climate control, fire suppression, and contamination prevention equipment that had been necessary to preserve the condition and functionality of items that included electronic systems, chemical detection equipment, and precision instruments that required specific storage conditions to maintain their operational capabilities and market value over extended periods. Elena found correspondence with international auction houses and specialty dealers who had collaborated with her grandfather on transactions involving particularly rare or valuable items that required expert authentication and specialized marketing to reach appropriate collectors and institutions. These relationships had enhanced the business's reputation while providing access to global markets for exceptional pieces. The documentation revealed that authentication services had generated substantial consulting revenue through contracts with insurance companies, legal firms, and government agencies that required expert testimony regarding military equipment identification, historical significance, and market valuation. These professional services had established the Colonel's reputation as one of the world's leading authorities on military, collectibles, and historical weapons systems. Elena discovered that the underground facility contained items from classified military programs that had been developed during the Cold War, but never publicly acknowledged until decades later. The declassification of these programs had made equipment legally available for private ownership, while maintaining its significance for understanding military technological development during critical periods of international tension and competition. Comprehensive nature of the collections and the sophistication of the business operations revealed that Elena had inherited not simply military surplus, but rather a complex international enterprise that combined historical preservation, strategic consulting, and specialized commerce within markets that served legitimate educational, research, and cultural purposes while generating extraordinary financial returns through ethical and legal channels. Elena realized that the full scope of her inheritance extended far beyond anything her siblings had imagined, encompassing business relationships, international connections, and specialized expertise that had taken decades to develop while creating wealth that exceeded the combined value of all other family assets by substantial margins. Elena arranged the second family meeting at the offices of Henderson and Associates, where attorney William Henderson had prepared comprehensive documentation of the professional appraisals, authentication reports, and business valuations that would formally establish the true scope and value of her grandfather's military procurement empire. The conference room had been equipped with presentation screens and document displays that would allow Elena to systematically reveal discoveries that would fundamentally alter her siblings' understanding of inheritance distribution and family financial dynamics. Marcus arrived 30 minutes early, his demeanor reflecting growing anticipation about Elena's promised revelations regarding her grandfather's business operations and the potential value of military collectibles that he had initially dismissed as worthless accumulation of surplus equipment. His preliminary research into military auction results and collector markets had revealed price levels that challenged his assumptions about the commercial potential of authentic military artifacts and specialized equipment. Victoria entered the conference room with obvious curiosity about Elena's discoveries. Her attitude transformed from dismissive condescension to genuine interest in learning about business operations that might represent investment opportunities or collaborative ventures within specialized markets she had never previously considered. Her questions during the previous week had reflected growing recognition that military collectibles represented a legitimate business sector with substantial transaction volumes and profit potential. Henderson began the formal presentation by explaining that Elena's inheritance had required extensive professional evaluation due to the complexity and scope of business operations that extended far beyond simple military surplus trading. The preliminary assessments had revealed assets, relationships, and revenue streams that necessitated comprehensive business valuation rather than standard estate inventory procedures typically used for personal property and collectibles. Elena's presentation began with photographs and documentation from the first storage facility, systematically revealing the scope and quality of collections that had been professionally cataloged and authenticated according to museum standards. Her methodical approach demonstrated the thoroughness required for proper asset evaluation, while preparing her siblings for information that would challenge their fundamental assumptions about inheritance values and distribution. Marcus studied the professional appraisal documents with growing amazement as Elena revealed individual items valued in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, complete equipment sets worth millions, and ongoing business relationships that generated substantial monthly revenue through legitimate channels serving museums, collectors, and research institutions worldwide. His hedge fund experience provided perspective on asset valuations and cash flow analysis that confirmed the extraordinary financial significance of Elena's discoveries. Victoria examined authentication certificates and provenance documentation that established the historical significance and legal ownership of items that included experimental weapon systems, personal effects from high-ranking military officers, and equipment from classified operations that had been declassified decades after their original deployment. Her investment background enabled her to recognize the sophistication and credibility of documentation that supported valuations exceeding her most optimistic expectations. Henderson presented the business valuation report prepared by specialized consultants who had evaluated Colonel Calloway's international relationships, client databases, and revenue streams according to established methodologies for assessing ongoing enterprises within niche markets. The professional assessment confirmed gross annual revenues exceeding $15 million, with profit margins that reflected the specialized expertise required for authentication, restoration, and international trade in military collectibles. Elena revealed that Dr. Sarah Chun's comprehensive authentication work had confirmed the presence of items from classified military programs, experimental weapon systems, and specialized equipment that represented some of the most significant military technological developments of the 20th and 21st centuries. The authentication process had established provenance and legal ownership while confirming market values that exceeded preliminary estimates by substantial margins. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Marcus requested detailed financial projections and cash flow analysis that would enable him to understand the investment potential and growth opportunities within Elena's inherited business operations. His questions reflected recognition that military collectibles represented a sophisticated market sector with established demand patterns and substantial profit potential for operators with appropriate expertise and relationships. Victoria asked specific questions about client relationships, international transactions, and market dynamics that revealed her growing understanding of the business complexity and strategic value of relationships that had been developed over decades of reputation building and expertise. Demonstration within global military collectibles. Markets. Elena presented documentation of ongoing contracts with film production companies, defense contractors, and research institutions that generated steady revenue streams through equipment rentals, authentication services, and consulting expertise. The diversity and prominence of clients demonstrated the legitimacy and profitability of business operations that served educational, cultural, and research purposes while maintaining strict compliance with legal requirements governing military equipment ownership and transfer. Henderson revealed that the preliminary business valuation had established the total worth of Elena's inheritance at approximately $160 million, including physical assets, business relationships, intellectual property, and ongoing revenue streams. The professional assessment indicated that Elena's inheritance exceeded the combined value of Marcus and Victoria's real estate and investment portfolios by more than 4 to 1, fundamentally altering family financial dynamics and challenging assumptions about inheritance distribution. Marcus sat in stunned silence as the implications of Elena's inheritance became clear. Recognizing that his dismissive attitude toward military surplus had been based on complete ignorance of both the contents and the sophisticated business model that had generated extraordinary wealth through legitimate channels serving international markets for military collectibles and historical artifacts, Victoria's expression reflected similar amazement as she processed information that revealed Elena's inheritance as the most valuable portion of their grandfather's estate. Despite initial appearances that suggested worthless accumulation of military equipment that would burden Elena with ongoing expenses and management challenges, Elena explained that her grandfather's systematic preparation had equipped her with exactly the expertise and relationships necessary to continue business operations that honored military heritage while serving legitimate educational and research purposes. Her academic background in military history, combined with international connections developed through research projects, had provided the foundation necessary to manage complex authentication requirements and client relationships. Henderson presented documentation indicating that Elena's business inheritance included not only physical assets and client relationships, but also intellectual property rights, authentication methodologies, and specialized databases that represented decades of accumulated expertise in military collectibles evaluation and international trade regulations governing military equipment transfers between authorized parties. Elena revealed that her exploration of storage facilities had been limited to preliminary assessment, explaining that comprehensive inventory and valuation work would require months of detailed professional evaluation to establish complete documentation of assets that spanned multiple facilities across several states. The systematic approach would be necessary to ensure proper insurance coverage, legal compliance, and strategic planning for continued business operations. Marcus began discussing potential collaborative arrangements that could leverage his financial expertise and investment connections to expand Elena's business operations within international markets for military collectibles and historical artifacts. His transformed attitude reflected recognition of opportunities rather than burdens, along with respect for Elena's specialized knowledge and established client relationships. Victoria expressed interest in learning about authentication processes, market analysis, and business development strategies that could enhance the value and growth potential of Elena's inherited enterprise. Her questions demonstrated genuine respect for Elena's expertise and recognition that specialized knowledge would be essential for maximizing the strategic and financial potential of the business operations. Elena concluded her presentation by explaining that professional management of her inheritance would require careful attention to legal compliance, client relationships, and market dynamics while maintaining the ethical standards and reputation for expertise that had enabled her grandfather to build trusted relationships with clients worldwide over decades of honest dealing and professional competence. Henderson announced that formal documentation of Elena's inheritance would require additional legal procedures to establish clear ownership of business assets, intellectual property, and international relationships while ensuring compliance with regulations governing military equipment ownership and international trade in historical artifacts and collectibles. The meeting concluded with Marcus and Victoria expressing genuine amazement at Elena's discoveries and requesting detailed discussions about potential collaborative arrangements that could benefit all family members while respecting Elena's primary responsibility for managing business operations that required specialized expertise and established relationships within international military collectibles markets. As the formal session ended, both siblings acknowledged that Their initial assumptions about inheritance distribution had been completely wrong, with Elena receiving the most valuable and strategically significant portion of their grandfather's estate, while inheriting business operations that generated wealth far exceeding their own professional achievements and investment success. Elena's transformation from the family member who inherited worthless military junk to the sibling who controlled a $160 million international business empire represented a complete reversal of family financial dynamics, while validating her grandfather's wisdom in recognizing that specialized expertise and ethical standards were more valuable than simple business acumen or financial credentials. 6 months after the revelation that had transformed Elena from the overlooked sibling into the inheritor of a $160 million military procurement empire, the Calloway family gathered at the newly established Colonel James Calloway Military Heritage Foundation headquarters in Monterey, California. The state-of-the-art facility combined museum-quality display areas with climate-controlled storage systems and research libraries that would serve military historians, veterans, and educational institutions worldwide while honoring the Colonel's legacy of preserving military heritage through systematic collection and authentication. The Foundation's grand opening ceremony attracted distinguished guests from the Smithsonian Institution, the National Archives, major universities, and international military museums who had collaborated with Elena's inherited business operations over the previous months. Their attendance validated the scholarly credibility and educational value of collections that represented one of the world's most comprehensive private accumulations of military artifacts and historical documentation. Elena stood before the assembled crowd wearing a tailored business suit that reflected her transformation from struggling academic to successful entrepreneur, her confidence evident as she addressed military historians, museum directors, and government officials who had come to recognize her expertise in military collectibles authentication and international trade in historical artifacts. Her presentation combined scholarly knowledge with business acumen that impressed observers who understood the complexity of managing both educational missions and commercial operations. Marcus occupied a position of honor among the Foundation's board of directors, his hedge fund expertise now channeled toward investment strategies that maximize the Foundation's financial sustainability while expanding its educational impact and research capabilities. His initial dismissal of Elena's inheritance had evolved into genuine respect for her specialized knowledge and strategic vision for combining profit generation with historical preservation and educational outreach. Victoria served as the Foundation's Director of International Relations, utilizing her social connections and business experience to develop partnerships with museums, universities, and cultural institutions worldwide. Her transformation from condescending sister to collaborative partner reflected recognition that Elena's inherited business represented opportunities for meaningful contribution to military history preservation and international cultural exchange. Foundation's establishment had resolved family tensions while creating structure for managing business operations that required balance between commercial success and educational mission. Elena's leadership had maintained profitable relationships with collectors, film studios, and research institutions, while expanding programs that provided educational access to military artifacts and historical documentation for students, researchers, and veterans. General Patricia Reynolds, former commander of Army Materiel Command, delivered the keynote address praising the Foundation's commitment to preserving military heritage while serving educational and research purposes that enhanced understanding of military history and technological development. Her endorsement validated the legitimacy and importance of Elena's work within official military and academic communities. Elena's presentation revealed that the Foundation's collections had grown through strategic acquisitions that utilized profits from authentication services, equipment rentals, and consulting contracts to purchase additional historically significant items that enhanced educational and research value. The systematic expansion reflected Elena's understanding of both market dynamics and scholarly priorities that guided acquisition decisions. The ceremony included presentation of the Foundation's first research grants, providing funding for graduate students and military historians whose projects required access to authentic military equipment and documentation. Elena's commitment to supporting academic research honored her grandfather's values while creating opportunities for scholars who might otherwise lack resources for comprehensive historical investigation. Marcus announced that the Foundation's investment portfolio had generated returns that exceeded projections, enabling expansion of educational programs while maintaining financial stability that would ensure long-term sustainability of operations. His financial management had optimized revenue streams from business operations, while building endowment funds that would support future growth and program development. Victoria presented the Foundation's international partnership agreements with military museums in Britain, France, Germany, and Australia that would facilitate scholarly exchange and collaborative research projects utilizing the Foundation's unique collections and expertise. Her diplomatic efforts had created relationships that enhanced the Foundation's global reputation while expanding access to international military history resources. Elena revealed that authentication services had expanded to include consulting contracts with insurance companies, legal firms, and auction houses that required expert testimony regarding military equipment valuation and historical significance. The professional services generated substantial revenue while establishing Elena's reputation as one of the world's leading authorities on military collectibles and historical weapons systems. The Foundation's research library contained over 50,000 documents, photographs, maps, and personal correspondence that provided unprecedented insights into military operations, strategic planning, and individual experiences during various conflicts. The archival resources served scholars worldwide while preserving materials that might otherwise have been lost or scattered among private collections without proper cataloging and preservation. Elena's business operations had evolved to include partnerships with defense contractors and military research institutions that required access to historical equipment for comparative analysis, reverse engineering, and technological development projects. These relationships generated substantial consulting revenue while serving legitimate national security purposes and technological advancement objectives. The Foundation's educational programs included seminars for military historians, authentication workshops for collectors and dealers, and public lectures that increased understanding of military heritage and historical preservation. Elena's teaching combined academic rigor with practical expertise that impressed participants from universities, museums, and military institutions worldwide. Marcus's investment strategies had diversified the Foundation's revenue streams beyond traditional military collectibles trading to include real estate investments, technology partnerships, and international business development that enhanced financial stability while expanding global reach and institutional relationships. Victoria's international networking had created opportunities for the Foundation to serve as intermediary for equipment transfers between allied nations, facilitating diplomatic and strategic objectives while generating profits that supported educational and research missions. Her relationships with cultural attaches and museum directors had enhanced the Foundation's reputation and access to international markets. Elena's expertise had attracted attention from documentary filmmakers, authors, and journalists who required authentication services and historical consultation for projects that brought military history to broader public audiences. The media relationships enhanced the Foundation's visibility while generating additional revenue streams through consulting and advisory services. The ceremony concluded with Elena's announcement that the Foundation would establish regional centers in strategic locations that would expand access to collections and services while creating employment opportunities for military historians, authentication experts, and preservation specialists. The expansion plan reflected her vision for transforming inherited business operations into sustainable institutional infrastructure that would serve educational and cultural purposes for generations. Elena's transformation from dismissed sibling to successful entrepreneur and recognized expert had vindicated her grandfather's judgment in recognizing that specialized knowledge and ethical standards were more valuable than simple financial credentials or business connections. Her success had created opportunities for meaningful contribution to military history preservation, while generating wealth that exceeded her siblings' traditional business achievements. The Foundation's establishment had resolved family conflicts, while creating structure for collaborative relationships that utilized each sibling's strengths in service of larger educational and cultural objectives. Elena's leadership had maintained profitable business operations while expanding their impact beyond simple commercial success to include scholarly research, educational outreach, and international cultural exchange. Marcus and Victoria's initial mockery of Elena's inheritance had evolved into genuine appreciation for her vision and expertise, while their own contributions to the Foundation's success had created opportunities for meaningful professional fulfillment beyond their previous careers in finance and social networking. The Colonel James Calloway Military Heritage Foundation represented the successful transformation of private business operations into institutional infrastructure that would serve educational and research purposes while maintaining financial sustainability through diversified revenue streams and strategic partnerships. Elena's leadership had honored her grandfather's legacy while creating lasting impact that extended far beyond commercial success to include scholarly contribution and cultural preservation. As the ceremony concluded and guests toured the Foundation's facilities, Elena reflected on her journey from struggling academic to successful entrepreneur and recognized expert in military history and collectibles authentication. Her grandfather's careful preparation had equipped her with exactly the knowledge and relationships necessary to transform inherited business operations into educational institution that would preserve military heritage while serving research and cultural purposes for future generations. The Foundation's success had demonstrated that exceptional value could emerge from unexpected sources when specialized knowledge combined with ethical leadership and strategic vision. Elena's story had become inspiration for other military historians and preservation specialists who recognized that academic expertise could create both financial success and meaningful cultural contribution through innovative approaches to historical preservation and educational outreach. 2 years after the Foundation's establishment, Elena stood before a packed auditorium at the Pentagon, addressing senior military officials, defense contractors, and international allies during the inaugural Global Military Heritage Preservation Summit. Her presentation outlined how the Colonel James Calloway Military Heritage Foundation had evolved into the world's premier resource for military artifact authentication, historical research, and strategic consulting, with annual revenues exceeding $47 million and partnerships spanning 43 countries. The Pentagon Summit represented official recognition of Elena's transformation from overlooked family member to internationally respected authority on military collectibles and historical preservation. Defense Secretary Michael Harrison had personally requested Elena's participation in discussions about establishing standardized protocols for military equipment disposal and historical artifact preservation that would serve both national security interests and educational objectives. Elena's keynote presentation revealed that the Foundation's authentication services had expanded to include contracts with NATO allies, emerging democracies, and international peacekeeping organizations that required expert evaluation of military equipment transfers and arms reduction programs. The consulting work generated substantial revenue, while supporting diplomatic initiatives and international security cooperation that enhanced global stability and conflict prevention. Admiral Jennifer Walsh, Chief of Naval Operations, praised Elena's innovative approach to combining commercial success with educational mission, noting that the Foundation's research programs had contributed valuable insights to current military, strategic planning, and technological development initiatives. The official endorsement validated Elena's work within the highest levels of military leadership while creating opportunities for expanded collaboration on classified research projects. Elena announced that the Foundation had acquired the largest private collection of Cold War military technology in existence, including complete missile systems, radar equipment, and communication devices that provided unprecedented insights into technological competition between NATO and Warsaw Pact nations. The acquisition had been funded through profits from authentication services and equipment rentals while serving legitimate research purposes for defense analysts and military historians. Marcus had leveraged his financial expertise to establish the Calloway Military Technology Investment Fund, which provided venture capital for defense startups and military technology companies whose innovations built upon historical precedents documented in the Foundation's collections. His investment strategies had generated returns exceeding 340% annually while supporting technological development that enhanced national defense capabilities. Victoria's international relations work had created diplomatic partnerships that enabled the Foundation to serve as neutral intermediary for military equipment transfers between former adversaries, facilitating peace processes and reconciliation efforts in regions affected by prolonged conflicts. Her success in building trust between opposing parties had attracted attention from the State Department and international mediation organizations. Elena's presentation included documentation of the Foundation's role in resolving several high-profile authentication disputes involving military artifacts claimed by multiple nations or institutions. Her expertise had provided objective analysis that enabled fair resolution of ownership questions while ensuring that historically significant items remained accessible for research and educational purposes rather than disappearing into private collections. The Foundation's educational programs had expanded to include the Military Heritage Academy, which provided specialized training for museum curators, auction house specialists, and government officials responsible for military equipment disposal and historical preservation. Elena's curriculum combined academic rigor with practical expertise that prepared participants for careers in military history preservation and authentication services. Elena revealed that recent archaeological discoveries in Eastern Europe had uncovered previously unknown military equipment caches from World War II, creating opportunities for the Foundation to participate in international recovery and preservation efforts that would enhance understanding of military operations during critical historical periods. The archaeological partnerships had generated media attention, while demonstrating the Foundation's commitment to scholarly research and historical accuracy. General David Foster, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, announced that the Department of Defense would formalize partnerships with the Foundation for developing improved protocols for military equipment lifecycle management and historical preservation. The collaboration would ensure that technologically and historically significant items would be preserved for future research while maintaining appropriate security measures for sensitive materials. Elena's business operations had evolved to include partnerships with major entertainment companies that required authentic military equipment and expert consultation for historical films and television productions. The Hollywood relationships generated substantial revenue, while ensuring accurate portrayal of military history and technology in popular media that shaped public understanding of military service and sacrifice. The Foundation's research initiatives had contributed to several breakthrough studies in military history and technology development, including analysis of experimental weapons systems that influenced current defense research priorities. Elena's scholarly publications had been cited in academic journals and policy papers that informed strategic planning and resource allocation decisions within defense establishments worldwide. Marcus announced that the investment fund had acquired controlling interests in several military technology companies whose innovations were based on historical precedents documented in the Foundation's collections. The strategic acquisitions had created synergies between historical research and contemporary defense development, while generating additional revenue streams that supported educational and preservation missions. Victoria's diplomatic success had enabled the Foundation to establish regional offices in London, Berlin, Tokyo, and Sydney that provided authentication services and educational programs for international clients, while expanding global reach and cultural exchange opportunities. The international expansion had enhanced the Foundation's reputation, while creating employment opportunities for military historians and preservation specialists worldwide. Elena presented analysis of emerging trends in military collectibles markets, including increased demand for Cold War-era technology and growing interest in specialized equipment from recent conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. Her market intelligence had enabled strategic acquisitions and investment decisions that positioned the Foundation for continued growth while serving expanding educational and research needs. The Pentagon Summit included presentation of the first annual Calloway Awards for Excellence in Military History Preservation, recognizing individuals and institutions whose work had contributed significantly to understanding and preserving military heritage. Elena's establishment of the awards program had created incentives for scholarly research while enhancing the Foundation's reputation within academic and military communities. Elena revealed that the Foundation's collections had expanded to include complete archives from several retired general officers whose personal papers and military artifacts provided unique insights into strategic decision-making during critical periods of 20th and 21st century conflicts. The archival acquisitions had been funded through authentication services revenue while creating invaluable resources for military historians and policy researchers. Defense industry representatives praised the Foundation's consulting services for providing historical context and technological precedents that informed current weapons development and strategic planning initiatives. Elena's expertise had contributed to several classified projects that enhanced national defense capabilities, while honoring historical precedents and lessons learned from previous conflicts and technological developments. Elena announced plans for the Global Military Heritage Digital Archive, which would provide online access to the Foundation's collections and research resources for scholars, students, and military professionals worldwide. The digital initiative would democratize access to military history resources, while generating revenue through subscription services and licensing agreements with educational institutions. The Foundation's success had attracted partnership proposals from major universities seeking to establish joint degree programs in military history and preservation studies. Elena's academic collaborations had created educational opportunities that combined theoretical knowledge with practical experience in authentication, preservation, and business management within specialized markets for military collectibles and historical artifacts. Marcus's financial management had enabled the Foundation to establish endowment funds exceeding $89 million that would ensure long-term sustainability of educational and research programs while providing financial independence from commercial operations. The endowment structure had created stability that enabled long-term strategic planning and program development without dependence on fluctuating market conditions. Victoria's international networking had created opportunities for the Foundation to participate in major diplomatic initiatives, including arms reduction, verification programs, and post-conflict reconstruction efforts that required neutral expertise in military equipment identification and disposal. Her work had enhanced the Foundation's reputation while contributing to COCO international peace and security objectives. Elena's transformation from dismissed sibling to internationally recognized expert had demonstrated that specialized knowledge and ethical leadership could create extraordinary value while serving purposes larger than commercial success. Her story had inspired other military historians and preservation specialists to pursue innovative approaches to combining scholarly research with sustainable business operations. The Pentagon Summit concluded with Elena's announcement that the Foundation would establish the Institute for Advanced Military Studies, which would provide graduate-level education and research opportunities for military officers, defense analysts, and academic researchers. The Institute would combine the Foundation's unique collections with cutting-edge research facilities and international partnerships that would advance understanding of military history and strategic studies. Elena's success had vindicated her grandfather's judgment while creating lasting institutions that would preserve military heritage and advance scholarly understanding for future generations. Her leadership had transformed inherited business operations into global infrastructure that served educational, research, and diplomatic purposes while maintaining financial sustainability through diversified revenue streams and strategic partnerships. Foundation's impact had extended far beyond Elena's initial inheritance to include contributions to international security cooperation, academic research, and cultural preservation that honored military service, while educating future generations about the costs and consequences of armed conflict and the importance of maintaining peace through strengthened diplomatic engagement. 5 years after, Marcus and Victoria's dismissive laughter had echoed through the law offices of Henderson and Associates. Elena Calloway stood before the United Nations Security Council in New York, presenting the Foundation's comprehensive report on global military equipment proliferation and its implications for international peace and security. Her expertise had evolved from managing inherited military surplus to serving as the world's foremost authority on military technology transfer, arms reduction verification, and post-conflict equipment disposal programs. The UN presentation marked Elena's emergence as a key figure in international diplomacy and security policy, with government leaders from major powers seeking her analysis and recommendations on complex issues involving military equipment identification, verification protocols, and strategic technology transfer agreements. Her transformation from overlooked sibling to global consultant had created influence that extended far beyond commercial success into matters of international peace and security cooperation. Secretary General Maria Santos introduced Elena as the architect of revolutionary approaches to military heritage preservation that had contributed to successful peace processes in 3 different conflict zones during the previous 18 months. The Foundation's neutral expertise had enabled verification and disposal of military equipment in ways that built trust between former adversaries, while ensuring that historically significant items were preserved for educational and research purposes. Elena's presentation revealed that the Foundation's global military equipment database now contained comprehensive information on over 2.3 million items from conflicts spanning 150 years, creating an invaluable resource for arms control, verification, peacekeeping operations, and post-conflict reconstruction efforts. The database had become essential infrastructure for international organizations responsible for monitoring military equipment transfers and implementing arms reduction agreements. Ambassador Qin Wei from China praised the Foundation's role in facilitating successful completion of the Sino-Russian Military Heritage Exchange Program, which had resolved long-standing disputes over World War II equipment and artifacts while creating collaborative research opportunities that enhanced historical understanding and diplomatic cooperation. Elena's mediation had demonstrated how military history preservation could serve broader diplomatic objectives and international relationship building. Elena announced that the Foundation had established the International Military Archaeology Institute, which would coordinate global efforts to locate, recover, and preserve military artifacts from historical conflicts while ensuring that sensitive materials were handled according to appropriate security protocols and international agreements governing cultural heritage protection and arms control compliance. Russian Federation Representative Dmitry Volkov acknowledged the Foundation's contributions to successful implementation of the New START Treaty verification protocols, praising Elena's expertise in identifying and cataloging military equipment that required monitoring under arms control agreements. Her work had enhanced confidence in verification procedures while demonstrating how technical expertise could support diplomatic achievements and international security cooperation. Elena's business operations had evolved to include contracts with the International Criminal Court for providing expert testimony regarding military equipment used in war crimes investigations and crimes against humanity prosecutions. Her authentication expertise had contributed to successful prosecutions while ensuring that evidence collection and preservation met international legal standards for admissibility and reliability. Marcus had expanded the Calloway Military Technology Investment Fund into a $847 million portfolio that included stakes in defense companies, technology startups, and international infrastructure projects related to military modernization and peacekeeping operations. His investment strategies had generated extraordinary returns, while supporting technological development that enhanced global security and conflict prevention capabilities. Victoria's diplomatic work had created partnerships with UNESCO and other international cultural organizations for protecting military heritage sites and artifacts in conflict zones. Her success in building consensus among diverse stakeholders had enabled preservation of historically significant locations and materials that might otherwise have been destroyed or lost during military operations and civil conflicts. Elena presented analysis showing that the Foundation's authentication and disposal programs had prevented over $2.80 billion worth of military equipment from entering illegal arms markets during the previous 3 years. The work had supported international efforts to reduce arms trafficking while ensuring that legitimate military equipment transfers served authorized purposes and enhanced regional security rather than contributing to conflict escalation. British Ambassador Sir James Worthington praised the Foundation's role in establishing the Commonwealth Military Heritage Preservation Network, which had created coordinated approaches to preserving and sharing military history resources among former British territories and Commonwealth nations. Elena's leadership had enhanced historical understanding while strengthening cultural and diplomatic ties between participating countries. Elena revealed that archaeological excavations conducted in partnership with the Foundation had recovered significant military artifacts from previously unknown battle sites in Eastern Europe, North Africa, and Southeast Asia. The discoveries had provided new insights into military operations during critical historical periods while demonstrating the Foundation's commitment to advancing scholarly knowledge and historical accuracy. Foundation's educational programs had expanded to include the Global Military Leadership Academy, which provided advanced training for military officers, defense officials, and peacekeeping personnel from over 60 countries. Elena's curriculum combined historical analysis with contemporary strategic studies, creating educational opportunities that enhanced international cooperation and professional competence among military leaders worldwide. Elena announced that recent technological advances had enabled development of advanced authentication techniques that could identify military equipment origins, manufacturing dates, and modification histories with unprecedented accuracy. The technological capabilities had enhanced the Foundation's consulting services while supporting arms control verification and criminal investigations that required definitive evidence regarding military equipment sources and transfers. French Ambassador Claire Dubois acknowledged the Foundation's contributions to successful implementation of European Union arms export control regulations, praising Elena's expertise in developing verification protocols that balanced legitimate defense, trade with prevention of illegal arms transfers. Her work had enhanced confidence in regulatory systems while supporting European security cooperation and international law compliance. Elena's presentation included documentation of the Foundation's role in training over 3,000 military personnel, customs officials, and law enforcement officers in military equipment identification and authentication techniques. The training programs had enhanced global capabilities for detecting illegal arms transfers while ensuring that legitimate military cooperation and defense partnerships could proceed without unnecessary bureaucratic obstacles. The Foundation's research initiatives had contributed to breakthrough studies in conflict archaeology, military technology development, and peace process implementation that influenced academic scholarship and policy development worldwide. Elena's publications had been translated into 23 languages and were used in university curricula and professional training programs across 6 continents. Elena revealed that the Foundation had acquired complete archives from several former Warsaw Pact military organizations, providing unprecedented access to documents and equipment that illuminated Cold War military strategy and technology development. The acquisitions had been funded through consulting revenue while creating invaluable resources for researchers studying 20th century international relations and military history. German Ambassador Klaus Müller praised the Foundation's contributions to successful completion of the Central European Military Heritage Reconciliation Project, which had resolved disputes over World War II military artifacts while creating collaborative research programs that enhanced historical understanding and promoted reconciliation between former adversaries. Elena's mediation had demonstrated how technical expertise could support broader diplomatic objectives. Elena announced plans for the Calloway Institute for International Security Studies, which would provide graduate education and research opportunities focused on military technology transfer, arms control verification, and post-conflict reconstruction. The institute would combine the Foundation's unique resources with cutting-edge research facilities and international partnerships that would advance understanding of security, studies, and conflict resolution. The Foundation's success had attracted partnership proposals from major international organizations seeking collaboration on complex security challenges involving military equipment proliferation, arms control verification, and post-conflict stabilization efforts. Elena's expertise had become essential for addressing contemporary security challenges that required technical knowledge combined with diplomatic sensitivity and cultural understanding. Marcus's investment strategies had created synergies between the Foundation's historical collections and contemporary defense technology development, generating innovations that enhanced military effectiveness while reducing costs and environmental impacts. His financial management had enabled the Foundation to maintain independence while pursuing mission-driven objectives that served broader public interests. Victoria's international relations work had created diplomatic opportunities that enhanced global cooperation on military heritage preservation while supporting broader objectives of cultural exchange, historical education, and international understanding. Her success in building trust between diverse stakeholders had demonstrated how cultural preservation could serve diplomatic purposes and enhance international relationships. Elena's transformation from dismissed sibling to global authority had inspired establishment of similar foundations and institutes worldwide, creating a network of institutions dedicated to military heritage preservation and international security cooperation. Her model had demonstrated how specialized expertise could create extraordinary value while serving purposes that transcended commercial success and contributed to global peace and security. The United Nations presentation concluded with Elena receiving the Secretary General's Award for Distinguished Service to International Peace and Security, recognizing her contributions to arms control verification, post-conflict reconstruction, and military heritage preservation that had enhanced global security while advancing historical understanding and international cooperation. Elena's success had vindicated her grandfather's vision while creating lasting institutions that would continue serving global security and educational objectives for generations. Her leadership had transformed inherited business operations into international infrastructure that supported diplomatic achievements, scholarly research, and cultural preservation while maintaining the ethical standards and professional competence that had enabled extraordinary success. The Foundation's impact had extended far beyond Elena's original inheritance to include contributions that enhanced international peace, advanced historical knowledge, and demonstrated how individual expertise and ethical leadership could create positive change on a global scale while honoring military service and sacrifice. Through meaningful preservation and educational efforts, the morning sun streamed through the windows of Elena's private office at the Calloway Foundation headquarters, illuminating newspaper headlines from around the world that chronicled the remarkable transformation of a woman who had once been dismissed by her own siblings. The Wall Street Journal's feature story titled "From Surplus to Superpower: How Elena Calloway Built a $500 million empire" lay open on her mahogany desk, a testament to a journey that had begun with cruel laughter in a dusty law office 5 years earlier. Elena's reflection was interrupted by a gentle knock on her door. Marcus and Victoria entered together, their expressions carrying the humility and genuine respect that had replaced their former condescension. Both had requested this private meeting to mark the 5th anniversary of their grandfather's will reading, a day that had changed their understanding of family worth and the dangerous assumptions that successful people often make about others. "Elena," Marcus began, his voice carrying none of the patronizing tone that had characterized their early interactions, "Victoria and I have been discussing something important, and we wanted to share it with you personally before making any public announcements." Victoria stepped forward, holding an elegantly wrapped package that contained documents bearing official seals and legal signatures. "We've spent considerable time reflecting on our behavior during those first months after Grandfather's death, and we realize that our treatment of you revealed character flaws that we're still working to address." Elena gestured for her siblings to sit in the comfortable leather chairs that faced her desk, the same desk where she now reviewed international security agreements and multi-million-dollar authentication contracts. The irony wasn't lost on any of them that she was now the family member whose opinion and approval mattered most in their business and personal decisions. Marcus opened the package to reveal legal documents transferring his and Victoria's remaining inherited assets to the Calloway Foundation, effectively combining the entire family inheritance under Elena's stewardship. "We've decided that our grandfather's wisdom in choosing you as his successor extended beyond the military surplus business. You should control all family assets. We've learned that true wealth isn't measured in real estate portfolios or investment accounts," Victoria added, her voice reflecting years of personal growth and changed perspective. "You've created something that will outlast all of us while honoring our grandfather's memory in ways we never could have imagined when we were fighting over what we thought was worthless junk." Elena studied the documents while processing the emotional complexity of her siblings' gesture. Their decision represented more than financial transfer. It acknowledged that their initial judgment had been fundamentally flawed, while recognizing that her leadership had created value far exceeding anything they could have achieved through traditional business approaches. "I appreciate this gesture," Elena replied carefully. But the foundation's success has always been about collaboration rather than individual control. Your contributions over the past 5 years have been essential to everything we've accomplished. Marcus, your financial expertise has created sustainable funding that enables our educational mission. Victoria, your diplomatic work has opened doors that my academic background alone could never have accessed. Marcus shook his head with a slight smile that reflected genuine humility. Elena, we both know that our initial contributions were motivated by embarrassment and attempt to recover from our terrible judgment, rather than genuine belief in your vision. You graciously allowed us to become part of something extraordinary after we had mocked and dismissed you. Victoria nodded agreement, her expression showing the personal transformation that had occurred through working alongside Elena rather than competing with her. The Foundation's global impact demonstrates leadership qualities that we're still learning to develop. Our grandfather chose correctly when he entrusted you with preserving his legacy and continuing his work. Elena stood and walked to the large window that overlooked the Foundation's research facilities, where scholars from around the world worked with military artifacts that told stories of human conflict and resilience. What happened between us during those first months taught all of us important lessons about assumptions, family relationships, and the difference between apparent value and true worth. She turned back to face her siblings, her expression reflecting both personal growth and continued commitment to the principles that had guided her transformation from overlooked family member to internationally respected leader. The Foundation will continue operating as a collaborative enterprise, with each of us contributing our strengths while maintaining the ethical standards that have enabled our success. Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances that reflected their shared recognition that Elena's response demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership and character that had enabled her extraordinary success. Rather than claiming victory or seeking revenge for their early treatment, she had consistently chosen collaboration and forgiveness. There's something else, Victoria said, producing additional documents from her briefcase. We've established educational scholarships in your name at 12 major universities, funding programs for students who demonstrate potential that might be overlooked by traditional academic and financial aid systems. Elena felt tears gathering in her eyes as she read the scholarship criteria, which emphasized character, determination, and unconventional backgrounds over test scores and family wealth. The programs would provide opportunities for students whose potential might be dismissed by people who couldn't see beyond surface appearances and traditional measures of success. The Elena Calloway Scholarships for Overlooked Excellence, Marcus explained, will ensure that other people who face dismissive attitudes and underestimation will receive opportunities to develop their abilities and contribute to their communities. The scholarship program represented the perfect culmination of Elena's journey from dismissed sibling to successful leader, who used her platform to create opportunities for others facing similar challenges. Her story had become inspiration for recognizing potential in unexpected places, while demonstrating that true success involved lifting others rather than simply accumulating personal wealth and recognition. As the three siblings embraced in Elena's office surrounded by awards, recognition letters, and international correspondence that documented the Foundation's global impact, they represented the transformation that can occur when people acknowledge their mistakes, learn from their experiences, and commit to becoming better versions of themselves. Elena's story had begun with cruel laughter and dismissive assumptions about worthless military surplus, but had evolved into a testament to the extraordinary value that can emerge when specialized knowledge meets ethical leadership and unwavering determination to honor family legacy while serving purposes larger than personal success. The Calloway Foundation's continued growth and international recognition demonstrated that individual transformation could create positive change that extended far beyond personal achievement to include contributions that enhanced global security, advanced historical knowledge, and provided educational opportunities for future generations of overlooked individuals whose potential deserved recognition and development. If Elena's remarkable journey from dismissed sibling to international leader has inspired you to reconsider your own assumptions about potential and worth, we'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Her story demonstrates that extraordinary value can emerge from the most unexpected sources when people possess the courage to look beyond surface appearances and traditional measures of success. What assumptions in your own life might be preventing you from recognizing hidden potential in yourself or others? Have you experienced situations where initial dismissal transformed into recognition and respect? Share your thoughts and experiences as we continue exploring stories that challenge conventional thinking and celebrate the triumph of determination over prejudice. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of people who overcame dismissive attitudes and underestimation to achieve extraordinary success while making positive differences in their communities and the world. Ring that notification bell so you never miss inspiring content that might change how you view potential, family relationships, and the importance of looking deeper than surface appearances when evaluating people and opportunities.